Chapter 6, Misfortune. This must be a sick joke. A joke that doesn't shake his soul and brings out a laugh from Izuku's lips. What a cruel world. Seems like fate is just not in my favor. He mumbles out, staring at the silver bullet. Emerald eyes then glance to the far side to his right, to where the bullet must have traveled to puncture his calf. But the question that he doesn't get to figure out is, where? He didn't hear a gunshot in the distance, which means that the person that shot him has a silencer equipped. And judging by the bullet wound, it created a rather large opening wound with clean cuts missing his bones, aiming his calf purposely to first immobile his walking ability. They could have shot his leg where his bones perfectly are, fracturing them to make it even harder for him to move, or even aim for his head where he won't know what hit him. But they didn't, which means this event can be something good or awfully bad. But this event also proves one thing: Izuku is still valuable to him. But what about Eri? Immediately, his eyes directed back without shifting his head, ignoring Mandalay's and Spinner's presence. Eri, still being held by Bakugo with his 2 arms and legs, doesn't seem like he is wounded. Good, good. Izuku mentally noted, directing his eyes back to the front. They haven't pulled a trigger on him yet, that means they couldn't see her. Good enough for now. He sterns his gaze. They haven't made another shot yet. His eyes look around the area. Trees and bushes surrounding his area, with a single building possibility in the middle of it, and a mountain high and far away from him. 2 possible area: the forest and the mountain. But judging by the accuracy and the wound, I have a sniper on my tail. He lowered his gaze and couldn't help himself let out a helpless chuckle. He couldn't even hear Mandalay calling out to him in concern. If he has sent a sniper, then that means that the entire ghost is here. He liked his lips, and closed his eyes, and hold his breath. He could feel his heartbeat, every single PND in his chest. Not through his ears that was occupied by the voices around him, drowning it out. This great pounding, the pressure, every beat, he couldn't hear it, but instead, he can feel it. This pressure urges the words, this horrible pressure of beating, pulsing, thumping. He held and breath out and in again, hold. 1 thump. 2 thump. 2 heartbeats, close to him, that signifies that it isn't his, Spinner's and Mandalay's. He needs to listen carefully. 1 thump. 2 thump. 3 thump. 4 thump. 5 thump. Nope. Those heartbeats belong to the heroes, villains, and students. He opened his eyes and exhaled through his nose. They aren't close enough. That means the sniper nor the rest of the ghost are within the range. He breathes once more. He wasn't able to detect the sniper position nor the other ghost around. But what he can do is to lure them out, are risky but worthy. He has already narrowed the pinpoint section of where one of the ghost is located to the right of his. Now, he just to lure the sniper to aim another shot so he can have a general idea of the position. But the question is how? The sniper aimed his calf to immobilize his walking ability. Then that means they didn't want him to walk anywhere further than he needs to be. They need him in this precise location. The location he is in is where the ghost is going to pick him and Eri up. That's all he needs. He reached out his right hand and lightly pushed Mandalay behind him. Move. What? Mandalay ignored his arm and went in front of Izuku instead of blocking his view. Emerald eyes set on sight with earthly brown. I can't just go. You're injured, clearly got shot. Without thinking, Izuku reached out and grabbed Mandalay's neck from behind and pulled her close to him. Face to face, eye to eye, nose to nose. Look here, miss. Her breath hitched. If it weren't that boy holding my sister's life, I wouldn't give a DMN about you. He can feel her heart beating rapidly from her neck. If he didn't put my sister in harm, then I wouldn't either to you. Brown eyes traveled away from him and looked behind him. He tightened his hold on her neck to where her eyes snapped back to him. So move. Her expression is readable. It's like his words sank into her heart, just as her expression sinks within it. Her eyes and mouth were frozen open in an expression of stunned surprise. As if his words are like a bomb that just exploded right in her face. He doesn't get it. Why so surprised? Are my words that shocked? Because there's nothing to be surprised about his words. Nothing at all, to where he clearly doesn't get it. His words and actions are all meant for one purpose only, Eri. They don't mean anything else, because it never meant to. No. Emerald eyes narrowed at her. She steels herself and repeats it for him to hear it again. No. Izuku parted his lips to voice out, but shut it as she continued to talk. I am a hero and my duty is to protect, not to run. If I can't protect a boy that is clearly injured in front of me from villains, then I am truly unworthy to become a hero. What? Izuku mumbled out. Duty, hero, villain, protect. What kind of mind is this miss having? Look, miss, I don't care about what you think or your duty is. What I need you to do right now is dash to get to safety. She finished his words, clearly knows what Izuku wanted, but her action did the opposite. She turned while Izuku still held her neck and placed her arms out, kind of like shielding him. And that's not happening. I know that you are doing this for your sister, but I am a hero. I don't become one to run. I become one to save. Her words alone meant she's serious. She's staying. He tightens his grip on her neck once more. Move. She stood her ground, as Emerald eyes can see her hands slightly shaking and her pulse increasing. She will not move, and that's final. Hey! What are you doing? Emerald eyes snap back to the voice that calls out to him. As he met face to face with the student staring at him wide and in shock. Probably because of his actions. Izuku opened his lips and let the words run. But before he could, he felt a shift of his grip and a force that instantly ripped out of his hold of the neck. Emerald eyes shifted back to the front as his view blossomed into crimson flying in the air and woman that he was holding falling to the side. A hysterical cry ripped through the forest as Izuku's hands moved, grabbed onto her before her body fully hits the ground. The first thing that he saw on her body was an injury on her right arm. A bullet wound. Mandalay. Mandala-sensei. Then in a distant, an explosion was heard coming from the mountain. Blue flames danced, can be seen eating the mountain itself. Izuku swallowed thickly, as groaning of pain can be heard from Mandalay's lips. He looked down at her, then at Bakugo holding his sister. Crimson eyes can be seen of breathing with absolute rage. He mumbled out. You should have just listened to me. Fate just seems not to be in Izuku's favor. His spare is uncomfortable. Crimson eyes narrowed, rigid, cold and hard. There was no trace of tears, not in his eyes or in the track marks on his face. The fire in his eyes is the rage that burns hot and dies fast. An inferno that Izuku is smart enough to know not to walk straight ahead to it. How am I supposed to do this? Izuku thinks to himself. His eyes glance down to the wound. His mind is reeling with thoughts. He knows Ghost like the back of his hand, to where it didn't quite make sense to him. Why shoot her? There's no purpose of shooting her, nor benefit. They don't shoot unless there's an order or a purpose. So why? But before any sudden movement was made, something hits the ground with cling and rolled. Emerald eyes traveled to where the sound is, to where it landed beside his feet, a stun grenade. His mind sent reeling, unable to comprehend or process for just a second, to where immediately held Mandalay close to his chest and jumped, just using his left foot, and jumped as far away from position. The small device filled with a mixture of magnesium powder and mercury fulminate. The blast didn't just deafen Izuku, it shuddered the right through him as if trying to rip out his heart. The light from the ignited mercury burned, as it was so blinding that even closing his eyes made no difference. All his ears can hear is the constant ringing, the disgusting smell of the smoke engulfing his surrounding. He swallowed down his saliva and shakes his head. With Mandalay below him unconsciousness, his left arm wrapped around her head as he uses his right hand and hit his head hard. His vision is blinking back and forth. White smoke he can see where in the amidst a silhouette out crimson eyes. He hit his head again. vision all fuzzy, cannot make out if the crimson eyes were really a thing or not. He hit his head once more. And when he looked up, gunpoint. What seems to feel like only 5 seconds of blinding turns to a whole minute of the worst-case scenario. There is tightness in his throat. He wants to breathe, but his lungs are not working. He can only breathe in the shaky breaths and the stinky mercury that is tainting the air. He swallowed and clicked his tongue. Funny, meeting you here. Emerald Eyes quickly glanced his right and then left, to where it seems there isn't any more silhouette coming forth. He's alone. Shut up, was the reply coming from a man holding a pistol right between his eye. You should be glad the boss still wanted you after that stupid stun that you pulled. Or else. I won't even hesitate to pull a bullet in your brain. There is clearly heat in his voice just by his words flooding out because Izuku knows that the man that is standing before him is hurt, deeply wounded. Still mad as a dog. Never did get a treat in the end, I suppose. Izuku replied back to the threat, slipping out his left hand that still holds the blade. The man saw the motion and pressed the gun HRD on his forehead. Don't do anything funny, 'cause I can do it right now. Izuku chuckled, but instead turned into a cough. No, you can't. You can't afford to betray him. Killing me is breaking the rules. You and I know that. You can't go against his orders. You didn't even tend to shoot me the moment you saw me. So what makes you think can shoot me now? He feels the gun shaking against his skin, whether it's fear or rage, it doesn't matter to him. Because before he even let the man speak once more, he flicked his blade into the air. Despite the smoke, he can slightly see the man tilting up, eyeing the blade. Taking the chance, his left hand swiftly pushed away the barrel of the pistol to where a shot rings out. The gunshot reached his ears like a violent alarm. A noise that heralded death and destruction broke through the smoke surrounding him. The gunshot was too close to his ears, ringing in his head, completely eating away all his senses. He blinked. Again. And again. He tilted his head to the side and blinked. The noise didn't stop. But somehow, probably due to all the experience he moved. Pressing hard onto his right leg caused ripples of pain exploding into his brain. But he kept going, pushing. Despite his heart rate comes down almost 100 beats per minute. He kept pushing. Despite his head-ringing nonsense, he kept pushing. Despite everything, he kept moving forward. He's trained for this. He has experienced this so much that he has lost count. Even if his mind is shut down, his body will be the one that will continue to fight and move forward. His only choice is to go forward. There's no backward, side, but only the front. That's the path he has decided on. Ignoring the pain that is constantly sending into his brain like ticking bomb, he jumped as hard and high as he can and smashed his right palm straight at the man's chin. Knocking his head up, causing him to lose his grip on his pistol and tumbles back. While Izuku falls forward, both of his hands are placed onto the ground to prevent himself from smashing to the floor. He let out several breaths. In and out, to where the noise is starting to slow and fading. Just as he was able to catch his breath, pairs of arms wrapped around his neck and head holding him tight. Immediately Izuku's hand reached out to the arm that held his neck, trying to pry it away. The air around him is devoid of oxygen. He can't breathe right, too short. His ribs heave up and down, but no benefit comes. Dizziness, as his vision swims like ocean waves. You should have just taken the easy way. You just have to make everything hard, don't you? The man growled from behind, as the smoke starts to clear. With his right hand dug deep into his suit, a left hand reached towards the ground. Hand shuffling around the leaves, twigs, soil, and pebbles. Nothing. Then his hand felt something metal and sharp. His fingers brushing against the material. Come on. His fingers touch the tip as the hold comes in tighter and tighter. He curled his fingers as the motion of the blade draws closer. Darkness is closing in, and all he can do is hang on. Come on. He curled his fingers inwards, to where he scrabbled for the blade that is held in his palm. Using his fingers only, he managed to hold the blade upward regardless of ending cutting himself in the progress. With the tight hold, he didn't hesitate and use all his strength and stab back as hard and forcefully. The blade didn't make contact, to where the hold of the man's arm was like ripped away from his neck and head, allowing his lungs to quickly and desperately to make them function normally again. His own right hand gripped his neck and eyes traveled to the right side of him, to where the man is being plummeted with a monster on top. The monster that spinner called him Nomu. It kept smashing and smashing, till crimson blooms once more. The Nomu then stops and turns around with the splatter of blood decorating onto his mint skin. It stood up from the man and walks and reached out towards Izuku. "Get away from it." He doesn't know who shouted, but the word sinks into his ears, but his body didn't react. He couldn't. The hand draws closer and closer to him, as his vision was engulfed by the monster. Crushed to the bones of the dust like he would expected, because compare him to the Nomu, he's just a mere ant. But instead, it touched him. It kneeled down in front of him, and its hand touching his cheek. Gently it touched him, caress his cheek as emerald eyes widen. A single tear slid down from its cheek, with its eyes hidden away from the violet helmet. It followed by another one, until soon a steady stream of silver tears flowed its way down to his mint skin cheek. It opened its mouth and let out a silent cry. Out of complete reverence, the things of the world still to listen. Like a budding flower it started, slow and gentle, but it rose to a wail that tore through the sky and forest. Its cry is equal to the 10 of thousands of voices sorrowing out, to the ends of the world it can travel, land, sea, forest, and valleys. It didn't care, to where the song of the monster can be listened loud and clear for everyone that is in the forest to hear its miserable, deafening song. Izuku just stares. His brain formulated no thoughts other than to register that he is shocked. Because this being in front of him is crying. Crying and crying for God knows what. God knows what this creature is. But one thing that Izuku knows for sure is that its touch can only be described in one word. Warmth. Chapter 7, Unexplainable What? The F. That is the first thing Katsuki's mind questioned when the scene unfolds right before his very eyes. What the F? His mind is a surging perplexity, and the cries still rage on with the song of the deafening muse which is swaying its victims with its voice by hiding away its minty skin by the voice alone. But the disguise that it is trying to hide has never once worked on Katsuki and his classmate. They all knew what monster it is hiding beneath the skin of a human. Dude, a hero is the first to break the silence, as he swallowed down his salvia and let his tongue taste his lips and the warm breeze. Am I you? A hero has seen Nomus before everyone in the Class 1A has seen Nomus back when they were all under an attack in the USJ. The first time when they all landed their eyes on it, it triggers the amygdala, the primitive part of the brain for processing fear gets involved. It would then takes one of the two options, empathy and calmness or flight and fight. And during that situation, it sets an alarm that reveals the concern for their own safety and the teachers. It brought out aggression, societal problems, and reduced creative intelligence. But that didn't stop their bravery and become a hero that protects and saves their classmate and teachers. To them, Nomu is the meaning of fear and courage. However, the Nomu that now stands before them shows a sign of weakness that none would have ever thought of. The Nomu is completely broken, shattered really, robbed early of the tape and glue that are necessary to put it back together. Whether or not the Nomu has a heart, and if it did, it's like poorly stapled shut and is beating hard but without purpose. Its minty skin stretched across its aching muscles like a worn canvas. Its focus is completely devoted to Deku, that it almost seems like a lost man at sea, desperate and starving for some reason to live, unable to see him so alive. Desperate for a memory, good, warm, welcoming, one that Deku can give in the Nomu's eyes. Then, it smiles. It's difficult to process at the Nomu's smile that is soft but contagious. It had stained its lips with its saliva drooling off its chin despite the metal gap. Not once has ever Class 1A has seen it smile, not since the attack from the USJ, nor when Katsuki, Tenya, and Shoto during the Hosu City. So there is something about the way it smiled, the way butterflies seemed to escape from the bit of Class 1A's stomach, and the way the moon toppled down from the night sky, made a home right there, as if the scene itself is perfectly normal. It's a life that the students see as a repair, not destruction. "You got iced, don't you, shitty hair?" Katsuki barked with no heat intended, captivated by the work of art that lays before him under the silver light. "Then you better start using them, 'cause this ain't a DMN illusion." "But that's impossible, right?" Shoto steps into the conversation, completing Ochiko's sentence. "Based on what we learned so far, no Mu cease to have any emotions and are considered mindless fighters. Yet this one seems a bit weird," Momo added on to Shoto's statement. She placed her right hand under her chin, and her left acting as a holder for her right elbow. She thinks, for a no-mu to act like this, must be a reason. No-mu is part of the villain's fighter, yet somehow knows Deku. Her eyes then travel to Deku, who's frozen by his spot. Yet it doesn't seem like Deku knows the no-mu. That doesn't answer to why the no-mu is acting like this, Denki stated, as to be more curious and cautious about the no-mu's action. Well, maybe he can be a villain. All eyes were directed to Mineta. All attention and focus are on him, as if he'd been speaking a language that they all couldn't understand. That moment his word slipped is the moment when the seed of doubt begins to plant the seed of doubt. What? Panic is a 5-letter word, 2 syllables, but very easily triggered. It like an alarm that sounds an ear-splitting wail, rose to the peak, again and again, undulating like a wave, and all the while wringing the student's brain out like a sponge. "I mean, I could be possible." Mineta screamed at the top of his lungs in defense. He then pointed at the girl that Katsuki is holding. "It's totally suspicious of how he and the girl managed to get into our camping location. It's reasonable to think it like that, not to mention the no-mu is acting like no. Words are tools, as a way to communicate." Yet this single word falls off of Momo's lips that stucks confidence in her heart. Now all eyes directed to her. "What do you mean by that, Yaoyorizu-chan?" Ochiko questioned her friend's word. "Are you saying that Deku-kun and his little sister might not be part of the villain?" Instead of answering first, Momo bowed first for apologizing for her outburst, then proceed to her explanation. "While it is true that we don't know how Deku-kun and his little sister stumbled upon this place, however, there can be a different explanation to why the no-mu is acting like this. And that would be Kiro. For now, I can't make any possible statement. However, even if Mineta-kun's words are true that Deku-kun is indeed a villain, I can definitely say that he will not attack us. Especially with Bakugo-kun holding his sister." "How can you be so sure?" Denki questioned, standing in between the border safety and doubt. "Because he values his sister, dipshit. He even dares to threaten me if I didn't protect his girl. If you still can't see that, then you need to get your eyes checked." Katsuki barked without any heat, as his eyes linger on the girl in his arms. She is curling deeper into his chest, to where it must be the heat that Katsuki is emitting that must be soothing to her touch. He can't tell, but he didn't bother to shove her away and just let her do whatever she wants for now. Well. This certainly was not expected. This was supposed to be easy. It's a simple solo mission to do. Get in, achieve the goal, and then get out. But somehow, there's more than one path that lays in front of him that does not propose his performance as willingly as it would. It nearly enrages him, if it weren't for his mind becomes a spinning top filling with questions rather than solutions, yet most directed the obvious. Who is this boy? Looking at the boy, the first thing he saw is the sole color that defines him: green. Like the forest canopy that reveals more shades than the whiskers on a fox, and every one of them is green. Probably because of the moonlight and the shroud of darkness that is already eating away their light, it created the deepest green of midsummer leaves, every one an efficient factory for making sugar dances on his head. Every shade, every hue falls the green that brings a memory of the transient beauty of the crimson and gold's tumble in the newly frigid winds. Staring at the color reveals a familiarity to Atsuhiro Mr. Compressed that he just can't shake, not a memory per se, but an echo that calls his intuition despite the boy has never appeared in the UA festival, nor were there any data file that was given to Especially that color green sticks like a bomb in his head. It takes a second or two for the astonishing scene to sink it, even though it is right before Atsuhiro's very eyes, larger than life. But even so, he still needs to complete his job, capture Bakugo Katsuki. He faced spotting his target, to which is easily identified by his sharp features and arrogant scowl. But something else caught his attention, the girl that he is carrying. Her hair is a kind of translucent white. It was not grayish or creamy nor blonde. It's absolutely white like the deep sliver of a moon, emitting a buttermilk glow that signifies that she is the moon while the other is the planet that she tries to bring light to the darkness. Quite a unique girl that he also never seen in the a festival and in the data files. Two unknown individuals, minus the dead guy that got smashed to oblivion. He slightly hums to himself. Two special guests have joined. Might as well take the boy with me if I had the chance. Derby or Tomura would sure love to get to know about this boy and the Nomu's relationship. This is going to be a speculator performance. What is speculator is how stupid you are. A sudden voice appears directly from below to where immediately Atsuhiro became face to face with a pro-hero, Eraserhead. The engine roars. The wind pushes on the van to no avail. It's going forward and nothing but a blessed tragedy can change that. The tires make its monotonous hiss over the crisp of the rocks on the mountain roads, and the air that makes its way through the filters is meadow-sweet. All around through the tinted windows are the deep dark forest that booms into northern lights. The driver fiddles with the radio as it bursts the crow's ears with static. There's not even a single voice that is being transmitted through. The static is a timing bomb for the crows as it grows stronger and stronger. And the views become closer. This ride and this car lead the crows to find their purpose of use, that it is somewhere at the end of this road, their answer to their calling is answered. The latest update that was transmitted from Ghost was that Izuku and Eri were last seen in the beast's forest. Harry reviewed the information to the rest of the crows that are settling within the nest of the car. We have also received the information of Shigaraki's men are within the area as we speak. Then a hysterical laugh erupted, followed by a single hiccup. All eyes turned towards Deidoro taking a sip from the bottle of alcohol. Old you that brat isn't trustworthy, stupid. Told you that brat isn't trustworthy, stupid. He laughed away, as each word was slurred from his drink. Should cough Cleedy that brat when we had the chance. But no. Should have killed that brat when we had the chance, but no. He brings the bottle to his lips and take a swing before settling it back down again. Stupid over Haywall octacted to the little bine and before he knew BAM. And now he wants him back, not Jew Moyant Haliv. GIHDONT get it. If it re me, I'll just kill hism on the K-spot. Stupid overhaul got attached to the little bunny, and before he knew BAM. And now he wants him back, not to mention alive. I don't get it. If it were me, I'll just kill him on the spot. Every word stung, only fueling the fire that burned inside of the crows. Every violated phrase was like gasoline to it, as the crows first began to clench and jaw-rooted. They are boiling with the explosion, but his comrade Shin Nemoto chose to remain his voice as warm and calm as possible. You better shut it. As a member of the 8th, you should know why Overhaul still wanted him. So speak anything ill or question Overhaul's intention, I'll have you thrown out of this car. Deidoro looked at Shin once more and tipped his drink. The sour and vile taste slipped into his mouth, nullifying him, stealing away reality in favor of fantasy. He came to lust after it like no other, the strong tonic becoming his only cure. He chugged and chugged, to let his mouth burst with his addiction before he finally replied as he liked his lips savoring every bit of the lustful taste. Whatever. He leans back and drinks once more. His words rocked every mind of the crows, leaving it moving in foreign ways. Ways that Shin have become unaccustomed to the years before. The words are an echo, but one with the power to tear down walls that many crows have built high and deep. In the needs of their boss to be wanted, to be needed, and to be loved. Yet here the crows stand walking towards the direction of bringing back a crow that was once theirs has finally walked away. In their world emotions, this strong is considered suspicious, and Shin has more priorities to think about than the health of his and comrades' heart and mind. He needs to think of a plan to make sure that the blue jay bird is kept within the cage. Cut the bullcrap about Overhaul already. Kendo is barely swallowing that anger when it was a fire seed and forgot to drink something cool. And so it grew in his belly until it came out as hot as any dragon has ever flamed. The fire burnt the words to roar, to where the attack fails to frustrate his teammates. Yet, it definitely didn't go unnoticed with the inferno that can't seem to contain itself by his comrade's eyes. I'm itching for a fight. When are we getting there? Kendo has a MSTR. For it controls every inch of him, his body, soul, and mind. It hurts him if he stayed for too long, to where he starts to feel weak, his body aches and he would struggle to act rationally. The fear of going insane. But it is also that feeling that changes him into the most sickening people that he can't help but love for it, thrive for it, and feel the thrill of it, the energy and happiness it can bring out, the happy chemicals in his brain. It's his addiction, the thirst for battle. Calm yourself, Kendo. We'll get there. Calm. Calm. Kendo's bubbling flames burst as he stood up from his seat, causing the car's weight to shift like an unbalanced seesaw. The driver in front has to quickly shift his gear and turn the wheel all the way to the left to resist the car being tipped over. Kendo! You raised his level of voice slightly to get Kendo's attention. But being a hothead as Kendo is, his skull is as thick as a boulder. We will get there in due time. For now, sit or else the whole car is going to be tipped over. Kendo replied with a sneering growl and didn't comply with Yu's words. Shin steps in with his usual calming voice. Enough of your childish emotions. Continue to let yourself act like that, and you will become a burden to us. Burden? Kendo's rage held all the power of a wildfire, to where Shin, Yu, Harry, and Deidoro can practically see the flames roaring in his eyes, ready to ignite everything that he came in contact. I'll show you burden. He took one step, as the car shifts again. The air is so brittle that it can snap any moment. Their faces are unreadable, probably due to the mask that shows no fear, no invitational smirk. Just staring, with their eyes flickering between Kendo and Shin, is like watching a fight that has been a choreographed dance of destruction for so long, tearing their group apart once more ever since Deku's little stun. Then the car screeched to a stop as the driver announcement breaks the silence and the tension apart just by mere words alone. We are here. Chapter 8, Farewell. It's chaos in Izuku's head. His memories are a blank space, like a soft beige wall bereft of photographs. But it kept persisting, dormant until a trigger, and then panic would start. Soft at first. His chest becomes a little tighter, breathing more difficult, and his craving solitude. In between the Nomu's smile and cries, it's mesmerizing that deeply pulls the strings in his heart in all sorts of directions that are both comforting, yet also weird. The voice, the action, the emotions are spiders that are crawling on his skin, sending a signal to his brain. And it's not a good one. Out of instinct, he slapped the Nomu's hands away. The slap was as loud as a clap, with its minty skin lightly smeared with Izuku's BLD on the left hand. The surge of the uncomfortable feeling traveled in his veins, but never made it to his facial muscles or skin. His complexion remained pale and matte, and his eyes steady. He let out an understated sigh and steady breaths that clearly betrays his shoulders hopping quickly on his body. His voice stuck in his throat as another expression graves on the Nomu. The tears continued to flow unchecked down to its chin and dripped from its chin. It didn't cry out or wail, but it kneels there as still as a statue while the scope of its loss swept over it. And the hand simply lingers in the air, unable to know what to do, unable to touch and unable to swing it back to its side. The smile drops. Izuku swallowed down his saliva with the words that he wanted to say. But the unexplainable actions that the Nomu revealed stunned Izuku way more than he expected, that he barely registered the sound of the rolling canister coming in closer and closer. Your objective, numbers, and positions. Spill it. Eraserhead demanded with no second to waste by straggling Atsuhiro with ease. He can feel the weight on his back as his mask is being scrapped against the dirt hard by the pressure of the pro hero is putting. Not to mention his right arm is being restricted by the hero's knee and the tight cloth binding around his arms and his chest. The tips of his right hand can be lightly grazed against the hero's clothing. He can touch him, but not fully. A magician never reveals one secret. Then, his vision was shot up and then quickly descended back to the ground, hard. To where he believes he can hear the crack of his mask withering. Your left arm's next. Let's do this rationally. Eraserhead continues, tightening his grip on Atsuhiro's left wrist. If I get as far as your legs, it'll be a hassle for the arresting officers. The tide has changed, and the favor isn't going to be in Atsuhiro and his comrade. Where in the world is Derby? His mind panics, but he managed to keep up his poker mask, always the critical rule for a magician. He chuckles and answered, now where's the surprise in that? His wrist tightness, feeling the pressure of the strength caging in against his sleeve, flesh, and finally his bones. He is prepared to embrace the pain that the Eraserhead shall bring upon his shoulder and arm. So, he waited. And waited. Nothing came, expected for the sizzling sound that quickly dies off. To where the smell of vinegar and caustic lingers in the air. The only information he managed to receive is the surprised tone of voice that Eraserhead emits from his mouth. What? Smoke fills in the air. The monochrome color-coated around Deku and the Nomu like nothing, swallowing them whole as the smoke gets bigger and bigger. What? What's going on? In a complete shock that Mina expressed, tiny explosive burst in vivid colors among the grey smoke follows by a loud shriek which tore through the students like a great shard of glass. And in seconds, Deku carrying Mandalay in his arms exposed from the smoke from the right side, with the trails following his movement. His eyes are his sword and shield staring at the smoke with agitation, and a new wound appeared on its right cheek. The look was brief before Emerald eyes set on Class 1 Vs direction. Hey! His voice is loud and demanding that it capture everyone's attention. The moment it did, Deku took his right foot forward, his eyes slightly twitches revealing his gritted teeth and SCKS a breath and hold before swinging back his arm and tossed the unconscious Mandalay into the air like she barely waited anything, then quickly twists his body around to face the smoke. Katsuki takes a step forward but is reminded that his hands are already filled. To where two students rushed in from both of his sides to help catch their pro-hero, Ahiro and Tenya. Oi! Hey! The moment that Deku turned, another person masked with a crimson goggled eye and a black suit burst from the smoke holding a dual-blade knife with a hardwood handle. It strikes. The knife met the flesh, soft and pudgy, that made a dissatisfying squish as the blade sank deep that it penetrated through Deku's left palm, cutting through his muscles, nerves, and bones. BLD gushing out of his palm, like a fountain. Deku's right leg buckled beneath him, causing him to lose his balance and has to place his right hand onto the ground to prevent going any further down, with the knife pressing harder and harder towards his face. Katsuki clicked his tongue. Round face. Who? Don't drop her. In a second, Katsuki lightly and gently as possible that he can ever manage, toss Eri in Ochiko's arms. Wait. Bakugo her words left her lips but didn't manage to reach Katsuki's ears, propelling himself forward in maximum speed straight to where Deku is. While for Ochiko, she safely managed to catch Eri in her arms despite scrambling herself to catch the girl to prevent dropping her to the ground, head first. She let out a sigh that she has been holding, in relief. Seriously? Bakugo? The tip of the knife is just barely even touching his left eye, obstructing his view partial, but still managed to see the familiar face ghost. The ghost twisted the blade in its hands, all the while sinking it deeper and deeper. His skin is tearing to shreds as the knife rotated, bringing out the music to the ghost's ears of his muscles and nerves being gouged growing louder. Then, without warning, the ghost jerked the blade all the way into Izuku's palm, until the shiny metal had disappeared inside of Izuku, and the black handle is pushing against his broken skin. The searing fiery burst pulsated around the wound, intensifying with each dragging step, jarring and brutal, with the knife digging deeper into his skin. With each step the pain amplified, the bloody muscle quivered, but not strong enough to send Izuku's mind at the edge tempted into sweet oblivion. You guys sure are persistent. Izuku has to bite his inner cheek to prevent any weakness in cracking his mask. Thick BLD flowing freely from the wound, gushed out in all directions, creating scarlet color, dyeing his whitened sleeve even more. Silence. The silence is a poison to them both, for in that void of sound the shallowness of their conversation is laid bare. It is also due to the mask that the ghost is wearing, that Izuku can't easily read its expression. However, it did reveal a hint of overbearing emotion through the strike of the knife. An emotion that Ghost shouldn't have. Why? A woman's voice, crackling and broken as the words produced. Izuku's eyes widened slightly. Why? Like a broken record, the woman repeated her words with each step, adding more and more pressure despite the blade has already sunk deep. Why? The word is loud and clear, as the ghost is trying to seek an answer that only Izuku can give. Her shout is twisted and distorted, mixed with fire lancing around Izuku's neck, strangling him to where he can feel the longing to hate. The ghost is intoxicated with emotion. She's truly deeply hurt. As Izuku can imagine, rivers of tears brimming with heavy salt is shedding behind the plain, dark mask. The moment Izuku's words slipped, a hand connected to the ghost's face, followed by an explosion. Die! Her ears popped by the explosion, to where the force knocks her back, releasing her grip on the handle of the knife, stumbling bit backward. The burnt smell of the clothing crisp into the night. She can definitely be sure that half of her mask is blown to oblivion. Then, in a brink of a second, she felt a hit under her chin, knocking her vision straight up, looking at the monochrome smoke and the sky. She placed her right hand under her chin as her left crystallized eyes stare at Deku, with his left leg hang straight up in the air, using his right hand as a support on the ground, before bringing it back down, and stood up slowly with the blade still connected to his left. She barely even registered the ash-blonde boy standing beside her target. Looking at him makes her heart ached. Before she even realized it, she had come to look at nostalgic photographs swimming in her head. These painful memories are just the same as nightmares. They vanished and reappear, replaying over and over, driving her insane. She can still remember the words that he told everyone that burst with immense hope and determination. His voice had soothed her ears and everyone else's that day, resonating so deeply with everything that Ghost is, echoing the appealing lyrics that were his song. To only be crushed at the moment they have all reached out, fingers extended to have the hope and choice of kindness and love to die out. Everything is a lie. And what hides behind the lies are the truths that fail to get to the light. What lies behind is the oath that once trusted, used, manipulated, and broken. A woman. The ash-blonde boy questioned with a glance, looking up and down with his crimson iris. Deku, whose eyes never once left meeting hers, draws a thin line on his lips. For all that is worth. She spoke, with her voice quivering, feeling her cheeks growing hotter by the passing second, and the tears continue to roll. Does anything meant nothing to you? The very minute second or moment when the ghost received the information of capturing Deku, doubt shoots through her like piercing arrow, destroying resistance. Doubt at Deku's actions, doubts at his choice of betraying their boss if it is worth as much like his very own life. Worry grew like corrupted, malicious and perfidy tree. Its branch is twisted, but the seed that is left in the group is wormed and grown, no matter how large and terrifying the darkness is. It endured like a small pebble to last infinitely. There is hope inside of her, that Deku is still the same and didn't mean to betray them all, betray his loved ones and his so-called family. She stares at him intensely, as the shriek of the unknown monster from behind continues with the thundering bullet decreases. He reached towards the handle of the knife and slowly pulls out while repeating the phrase. For all that is worth, she can hear the slight groan of the pain dripping in his voice. With the blade fully pulls out, with the metal drenched in his BLD, he tosses it to the ground and reached behind his back. But she is too absorbed on concentrating his words to fail to anticipate his next action. She inhaled a trembling breath, sweat accumulating on her skin, icy cold. Then she falls backward as the world falls with her. The pain doesn't burn like fire, as it had been quick and easy, fading her body to an icy numbness. Black filled the edges of her vision, and the only thing she could hear is her own heartbeat. Her breath came in ragged, shallow gasps. Seconds passed, as she lay there. So this is his answer. This is his choice. Laughable, stupid, and most all it brings and taught her that hope is just an illusion. Something that never existed in the beginning. But even so, she still believed in him. I'm so stupid. She closed her eyes, dreaming in a world where despair and suffering bring no such thing. Her fragile, human heart beat one last time before death rips her away from the vicious world. For all that is worth, they mean nothing to me. And there stands Deku holding a 9mm pistol with smoke releasing from the barrel in his right hand, aiming straight at the woman that once stood in the position not far away from him, and the ash-blonde boy widen in complete shock. Then several voices scream in absolute terror came behind Deku and Katsuki. Chapter 9 The Caged Blue Bird. Fire is the most appealing weapon of all. It shines with all its glory while raging on its hunger on its victim. It's like an animal, to be precise, approaching its prey with its snarls and bites. Then, with a mere second, everything would be gone, burnt to crisp, as their existence is never there at first. And to Derby, that is the best and worst weapon that has ever gifted to him. Pathetic. His words held a different feeling of a fire can bring. There's no warmth, no beauty, and neither shows the hospitality to the ghost that he's currently holding with his piercing red glaring in between his fingers. I figured that in our previous encounter, you guys would at least put up a decent fight. But, what a shame. His eyes roam to his masterpiece that he has created. His flames clenched onto the lifeless ghost, continuing to quench its hunger. The more it consumes, the bigger it grew, surrounding his area, labeling his domain. The trees crackling like tiny fireworks before quickly die out as the smoke arises from their ashes. Tell me something. He pulls the one remaining ghost closer to him, eyeing the piercing red half-burnt to reveal another color underneath hazel. Since you, trash, is here, that must mean those freaks are here too. Why? The ghost didn't reply. To his only action is to narrow its eyes on Derby's. Not very talkative, hell. Figures. Dogs will always be dogs, no matter the odds or evens. And with those words, he brought up his left hand that has a firm grip on the ghost's face and slammed down onto the ground hard, with the burst of his power engulfing the ghost, entirely perishing it from existence. Between a dog and trash, I would much prefer for you to be kindled to my flames. His hand slid off the burning corpse and walked towards the edge of the small cliff with the fire dances gracefully behind him. He can see the forest stretch, as eyes can see, with his flames continues to burn. But something caught his eyes. A thick, grey smoke emerged from the middle to where there rests an open area of a large building, the purple mist gradually decreasing by the passing moment. His eyes narrowed at the sight. Is the new kid having trouble? With the ghost lingering around, the chances of completing the mission might be difficult, not difficult for the newcomers, but for Togaran himself. The ghost won't attack everyone unless necessary or given orders to. But despite knowing this, Derby went on a little fight with them, disregarding his mission of supposedly to hold back the pro-heroes. Ironically, they are nowhere to be seen, as his eyes then caught the sight of glowing crimson that catches his attention during his walk. The moment he saw them, he was unsure if it's a pro-hero wandering in the forest as well. But, thanks to the light of the moon, that wasn't the case. His eyes are then set on the new prey that has trapped itself in the forest along with him currently. And that's what went on for a couple minutes or so, following the trails of the ghost, even more, to lead him even deeper into the nighty forest and up to this mountain. It's pretty far from where I should be heading to. Crisis. He brought up his left hand and racks it through his black hair. He has abandoned his current mission to take up these ghosts. Well, at least if this mission did fail, I can tell Tomura that I toasted some ghost. Maybe then he'll get off my case. A small smile plays on his lips just by thinking the childish tantrum that Tomura can cause, and how Kurogiri will always try to calm things down. Sometimes, things never changed. His eyes then travel to the night sky. The breeze below warm, mixed with the summer's hottest days, and his own fiery heat. The starry night looms above him, pretty enough to ignite the heart of any child, but not him, for his heart hasn't beaten alive ever since 6 years ago. You must be laughing at me, right? There isn't anyone standing beside and behind him. His eyes completely focus on the stars glistening and hung by invisible strings that just refuse the stars to fall. Agreeing to this type of plan when the success chance is just 50. But hey, it is Tomura that I'm talking about, annoying as that brat is. His head drops back down, letting out a silent sigh. Things hasn't been the same ever since you left. And a pause for a quick second, and let his words run in his mind instead. I don't even know. Pathetic, isn't it? His voice grows lower. For once, I let myself be drowned in the brat's plan and have myself stuck in this situation. He paused before continuing. I'll visit you again, once this crappy job is over. I'll bring the crazy girl over too. No reply, as there is only the howling wind breezing against his tattered coat. I know, no need to remind me. And with those last words, he let himself tipping his body forward, allowing his vision of the world gets distorted. He falls, for his wings has long been burned to ashes. The only choice he has is to fall, not to aim, not to climb. But to fall. Because there isn't anything to aim higher to. For that, he is now trapped in the cage of iron bars, and the only way to push forward is to wait and fall along with the cage. The more Derby walks, the more trees it peers into his line of vision. The sharp snap of the twigs and the rustling of the leaves travel to his ears. Truth to be, Derby is getting sick of seeing the same surrounding wherever he went. Then, a smell struck his nose. A metallic pungency that reveals a festering scent comes close, but not quite there to make the odor heavy. BLD. With quickened steps, he follows the scent growing stronger by each step. It went on for about a minute, as he then heard a chaotic, fits of giggle that he knew too well. Pairing with the sweetest voice, but to him, it's annoying. Poke. 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 There in the middle of the bloodshed with the bodies scattered across the dirt ground decorated with single bright color red. And there, kneel Toga caked with what seems like dried BLD coating around her body like she is the canvas herself. She wields a crimson knife in her right hand and continues using the very tip of the blade to poke the lifeless body of the ghost. Each poke creates a new fountain of BLD to pool underneath her and the body. Poke, poke, poke dash. In an instant, Toga turns her head around, dropping her frantic smile and shoots out her crimson knife. It made solid contact on the tree that is with Derby tilting his head to the right side, crossing his arms. Watch where you're throwing it. Oh. Derby-chan. Her smile grows back onto her face, showing off her perfectly white teeth and the razor-sharp fangs both top and bottom. She stood up, jumping up slightly upon seeing Derby and begins to walk towards him. You're picking me up. Her tone never changes, filled with excitement like a child that has just finished playing her beloved toys and can't wait to see her loved ones. Not really, Derby answers casually, pulling out the knife from the truck using his right hand, by simply just grabbing the handle from behind. He pulled it a bit hard for the blade to detach itself, and chips of wood falling off. He eyes the blade a bit, to where the blade only managed to reflect a portion of him before looking back at Toga, who's slightly puffing out her cheeks. Chill it crazy, Derby said, walking towards her and smoothly twirl the knife between his fingers, allowing the handle of the knife directing to Toga, while the blade directing it to him instead. Why are you here? Did you manage to get some BLD from the UA students? Nope. She said it, popping the letter P, as she gracefully took the knife holding it close. I didn't see any kittens around, but I did find them instead. Had an amazing conversation. Right, Derby continued. Seems like this mission isn't going smoothly as Tomura thought. Or lame, Derby-chan is sad. She giggles, letting her emotions running high as usual. Shut it. Derby snaps, without any real heat in it, to where he got a good look at the girl's face smeared with BLD splattering marks. He sighs, as he then grabs the edges of his own coat, kneeling a bit down at Toga's level and gently wipe the BLD off of her face. Toga didn't resist, proudly and openly reveal her face to him. After this, let's pay him a visit. Toga gasped, not in shock, but in excitement. I get to wear pretty dresses. Hops around like a bunny and doesn't know when to stop. I'm so happy. I'm gonna be so cute. Derby felt the urge to roll his eyes, but didn't actually do it. "Stop hopping." Toga immediately complied, as Derby carefully wiped the BLD off. Not completely, but not highly visible to see. After that, he let go of his coat, dropping it back to his side and stood up fully. His eyes then scanned around the area. "You really went all out on them." Toga hums and follows Derby's direction. "Oh, that. I didn't. Fishy did all the work, I basically did the talk." "Fishy?" She must mean Moonfish. Derby questioned Toga's skill of giving people's nickname. "Yup." "Where's his now?" "Well, he went ahead. One of them escaped and run in that direction." Toga clarified, pointing to the right side of her. "That is the direction that I'm heading." He then focuses his attention on Toga. "And you stayed here?" "Yup. I was having fun." Fun. What a dangerous yet simple word, especially to her. Because in Derby's eyes insanity stole into her mind like a deranged thief, taking what was important to her and added new dangerous ideas to make her life spark more than she already is. Those ideas are once she would have dismissed as bizarre started to grow deep roots, cascading out of control, luring her further and further from the self that she once knew until she was in too deep that she can no longer recognize that forest around her. The path twisted and turned out of sight and dense as a trunk. She tries to follow Derby from behind, walking towards the same direction as he is. Each step she trod creates a new path that formed an inescapable maze, a prison without walls. Derby sighs, as he can sense the presence of Toga following him. "Why are you following me?" "What?" "I'm bored. I thought you said you were having fun." Was Derby-chan. She purposely drags out the S to indicate that feeling she has before diminished. "Besides, I was able to get one piece of information out of the kitten that I was talking to." As Derby understand how Ghost is, their lips are tightly sealed, for their loyalty to their boss are absolute. So it is shocking to him that Toga is able to get information, while he couldn't. He stopped his movement, looking at Toga with a smile creeping onto her lips. "That is." She parted her deep, crimson lips with both of her hands behind her back and answered. "HHHHH." Denki stammered the first letter of the word, getting repeated several times before he can finally spit out the entire phrase. He shot her. His right index finger shaking furiously, as at the same time he drags his legs back a couple step. "Oh my god." Momo placed her hands over her lips, as her ebony eyes dilated slightly. "Kiro." For that is the only word that Tsuyu can squeak out, backing up slightly as well. Bewildered, with the BLD drained away from each and every one of the Class 1A's face. Their brain desperately scrambling to make sense of it all, rendering speechless for the half while the other is gibbering nonsense, unable to comprehend what had just occurred, with their mouth opened and shutting like a goldfish. And just like that, time seems to have paused for the hero course student. For over their course of experience, not even a full year, have they never, ever seen an incident like this. Sure, that these students experienced fear, struggle, challenges, and most of all injuries, but for human life to just got shot like in a blink of an eye, just made the student realized how quickly death can befallen to anyone precisely despite the time and place. And not even Katsuki can quickly wrap his head around seeing murder firsthand. He kept eyeing the 9mm pistol, still smoking from the barrel. And stare is all he can do, as Deku lowers the gun. He wasn't sure what is he supposed to feel in 3 seconds that this scene has created. But what he does know is the rage that takes place in his heart and mind. "Oi." With those words falls from his lips, his right hand instinctively reached towards Deku's face, as Emerald Eyes looked to his left. Yet instead of able to feel the skin of the contact, his wrist was knocked to the side by Deku's left wrist, with his blast completely missed. Emerald Eyes narrowed at Katsuki's action, capturing his complete attention. "What's the big idea, you F?" Raw with anger is all directed to Deku, who's barely even fazed by his heat. Instead, Emerald Eyes are looking directly at Katsuki's, as if he's searching for something. "I can say the same for you." Perfectly calm is what Katsuki first noticed. To where that is the first alert in his head. This guy. Emerald eyes narrowed even more, as his lips pressed into a thin line when he scanned Katsuki up and down. To where his eyes then traveled behind Katsuki. Crimson eyes followed Deku's line of sight and meet the speechless Class 1 Reyes student, who flinched upon seeing Deku, especially Ochako. Immediately, Katsuki uses his left hand to aim at Deku. I'll kill you, you bastard. You are not going anywhere near them. With his left hand sparks in fireworks, Deku immediately and harshly snapped Katsuki's right wrist away from his own hand. Swiftly, Deku's left hand snatched Katsuki's left wrist, completely directing his aim lower than Katsuki's original aim should be. Then, the moment the second blast went off, Deku steps inward, invading Katsuki's space and placed the 9mm pistol right under Katsuki's chin, forcing him to stop all his movement, and also his head a bit upward, and had to use only his eyes to glare below to meet Deku's. And who are you, to make that choice for me? The barrel of the gun still has a slight heat due to being previously fired. But other than that, is the chilling sound of the metal clanking in his ears. Bakugo! Panic can be heard from his classmates, as Emerald eyes look directly behind him once more then to meet his. Katsuki should experience fear. But all he did was pushing his face closer with the gun, following his every movement. Katsuki believes that nothing in his face betrayed his fear, as it is a mask of defiance and surety. He snarled, taking a step forward as his right hand hooked onto Deku's neck, while he can hear the metal of the gun tighten. The name's Bakugo F. Katsuki. The hero that will even suppress the number 1 All Might. That's who I am, you F. Deku blinks at Katsuki's outburst of introduction. He tightens his grip on Deku's neck. He scowled, and I dare you to effing even try to take a step forward. Will you be fast enough to pull the trigger, or I will be even faster at exploding your neck? Your choice. Deku blinks at Katsuki's threat. Target. Derby questioned at Toga's information when she spilled that the ghost is currently hunting down someone or a group. Why sure? Are you doubting me, Derby-chan? Toga asked innocently, adding a bit of a fierce of shock, leaning her upper body forward and eyeing her comrade. His eyes met Toga's before looking forward once more. For Overhaul to send out the entire ghost into this forest must mean that whoever this person or group is important to him. No. Toga then rushed forward a few steps ahead and paused, bowing slightly as her eyes looked at Derby's blue eyes. Really? At times like this, Derby just wanted to keep on walking, ignoring Toga's existence, and kept going on his way. But he didn't. Instead, he lifted his left hand and flicked Toga's forehead. Toga winced, placing both of her hands that are smeared with dry BLD on the spot that Derby hits before he kept continue walking along the path. Stop spouting useless things when you already know the answer. And with those words left Derby's lips, Toga giggles before joining him on the side once more. Chapter 10, Bad BLD. The city is a vast, intricate labyrinth of noisy streets and alleys. He can hear the incessant honking of the vehicles even before able to know that it's stuck in traffic. The impatient businessmen who simply finally be able to escape from the clustered office, mothers who had to buy groceries facing the puzzling challenge of navigating through the crowds of parents and children, even some elderly who had stopped at the local bakery to get rice cake or two before leaving to their journey home with or without their champions. But none of matters to Tomura, sitting crisscrossed before of the tombstone beneath a giant tree with lively green leaves, hiding his views from the glistening stars shining above, but didn't fully cover the casting moonlight. Almost everyone is thinking, it's no skin off my back. He scoffs. No, they're not even thinking about that. He observes the sea of lights that is simply swimming below him to the right, that aloof judgment with no strings. To him, those lights are like stars shone as sugar split over black marble, glistening in the sun, welcoming anyone with the sight that appears like magic. It is a sign that shows hope for everyone, new tenders, business proposals, celebration, happiness, and most of the love. It disgusted him. No matter where someone tries to kill someone else for whatever reason, those guys will just keep on smiling thoughtlessly and going on living. And once the night is over, the world will have forgotten about you. What's up with that? He questioned, seeking for an answer that he hoped he would get. Not only have the world has forgotten about you, but you'll also just become a side story. He paused. Just like you. His right hand reached towards the tombstone, and gently touching the carve, carefully not to place all 5 of his fingers simply, allowing his index and thumb gliding over the carved words. You annoys me. Just go and disappear whenever you wanted. His crimson eyes moved slower, each time his fingers grazed over the text. It was like he wanted to keep the words inside his head, afraid that it would simply vanish, forgotten. I really don't like you. Hate is the devil's path that is filled with its ash-strewn surface without a single footprint left on its trail that is once walked. Always left with the temptation to walk is the platter of logical and compelling reasons, ones that boost the ego and frame false heroes. There is no prize worth the corruption of any soul, as hate brings only pain and the cycl of destruction. But that is different from Tomura. Hate is the meaning of longing. For his words were meek and quiet, causing an ache that comes and goes, always returning in quiet moments after he finished his talk. It felt raw, dulling his senses and goals, allowing the brain to redirect, reinvest the energy elsewhere to where he is now talking to a gravestone. The clock ticks, as the time dissolve itself like shapeless rain. The pearl still lifts her head high with the tiny jewels enveloping her beauty in the darkness, dragging along the sky. And there still sits Tomura in his same position with his arms resting on his knees, allowing his hands to drop inwards of his crisscrossed legs. Behind him, a swirl of purple fog manifest. There you are, Tomura Shigaraki. Kurogiri. Tomura lifted his right index finger and scratches his neck that is hidden under the black hoodie. He doesn't even need to turn around to see who it is, and can be recognized by the voice alone. It's time for you to head back, the night will soon pass. He knows. Time doesn't stop for anyone, it kept moving forward. But that's the thing, his time has long come to a stop. Kurogiri, what do you think he'll say about my game plan? He continues to talk, with his downcast, crimson eyes on the grave, ignoring Kurogiri's words. It's been RPG role-playing game up until now. With only half-decent equipment, I went and charged at the final boss at level 1. But we should have been playing this like a sim. He continues to let his words run, not even noticing to give Kurogiri a chance to answer him back with the question. One where I'm the player, moving units around and breaking through to higher ranks. For that, we gonna put some cracks in this superpowered society. It doesn't matter whether or not the Vanguard action squad succeeds or fails, the plain fact that they made a move there will NTMT the heroes. It was right out of the same old playbook: dehumanize, destabilized, antagonize. It's an easy solution, always war. Even a chessboard was a status symbol, fashioned from granite and polished to perfection. The villains are the black, artistically arranged, each different, but a complementary hue of brown, grey, or ebony. The white is the heroes, everything from snowy to creamy with streaks and dots of color. They are also the first to make the move with their pawn, setting them into a labyrinth of the forest. While Tomura is patiently waiting for his opponent, fingered a black pawn. This game is a fight not for his or the villain's life, but it is the start of the revolution against the heroes. It's only the beginning. Disposable pawns then. Tomura scoffs ruefully. Don't be stupid. Do I look like such a cruel guy? He continues. Their strength's the real deal. He even said it himself about those 2 brats. What about the newcomers? Like a game, they have to test out their strengths against the mini-bosses. They're all heading in different directions, but each can be a reliable comrade. Tomura then reached inside his pockets and pulls out a photograph, holding it with just between his right index finger and thumb, this society's bound hand and foot by all its DMN rules. And we're not the only ones feeling suppressed. So yeah, I'm hoping they succeed. He smiled. I think he'll like him too when he joined our side, Kurogiri. He held the photograph up towards the sky, allowing the silver moonlight casting onto it, revealing Bakugo Kutsuki cuffed and chained like an absolute mad dog. Izuku hates him. Well, hate is too strong of a word, but that definitely expresses his honest feelings about the current mad dog that is grabbing his neck and wanted to snap it in half. Not to mention, also wanting to give him a first-degree burn. Izuku can only curse at his bad luck that brings him into his bizarre position. Where's your off button? Izuku simply let his mouth run, without even thinking of the consequences that an angry tiger can bring. Not to mention, Bakugo introduced himself to follow up with a threat. Izuku finds that both impressive and utterly stupid. But there is one thing that Izuku doesn't understand: his actions. Why is he threatening me? His actions came from saving Izuku to 360 hostile, right after he shot the ghost. Bloodshed is as barbaric as it was stupid. It was as evil and cruel. There are thoughts that can come with reasons to kill, like they are the devil's siren. But for Izuku, he's not tempted by the muse. He's tempted by love instead. Listen, Beach, Bakugo growled. Before you start messing with me with your smart-ass mouth, having to hear enough of the Bakugo's voice, Izuku twirled his gun downward and repositioned his aim directly at his lips, pressing the muzzle firm onto him, resulting him to shut up. Hey! 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 One shout of panic reached Izuku's ears, but he didn't react to it, as all his attention focuses on Bakugo's readable rage. There's your off button. Knock it off. He's going to kill him. Aizawa-sensei. Once more, another voice traveled to Izuku's ears, but didn't pay much attention. He pressed the muzzle more onto Bakugo's lips. Listen here, tiger. Bakugo's right eyebrow twitched. I don't care what is your game of both threatening and attacking me, but I won't hesitate to pull the trigger if needed. He continues, as he steps in closer towards Bakugo with only the gun creating a wall between them. And if you think your quirk is faster than me pulling the trigger, his thumb pressed down at the hammer of the pistol, giving a click. Shall we test that theory out? 'Cause I know for a fact that whatever happens, the bullet will go through your thick dash. A loud shriek erupted, cutting through Izuku's words, and draws his attention to his right where the smoke still held high with its color. His eyes caught the sight of several firecrackers booming in the dark, followed by several footsteps. Without even a second has passed, a ghost emerged in the smoke, looking over its shoulder before looking forward again. Crimson eyes met Emerald, as Izuku swiftly redirected his gunpoint towards the ghost and fired. He missed. Rather, he was forced to miss, as Bakugo's right hand that should be on his neck is now pressing down the barrel of his gun, aiming at the ground instead. Emerald eyes widen in shock, as Bakugo growled through his teeth. Over my dead body. This guy. Then, another click of a metal directed Izuku's attention to where the barrel of the ghost's assault rifle sparks with fire. The bullet silenced through the wind like nothing and kept on pushing forward against the wind and gravity, directly aiming at Izuku's right eye. And before he knew, crimson blooms in the night sky. The bullet made a hit. The BLD flows thinly over the skin, where the bullet made contact specifically on the Nomu's back. What? Izuku unconsciously mumbles out, with the Nomu bringing out its all six hands protruding out on its back and wrapping around both Izuku and Bakugo without leaving a gap between the arms and fingers to let anything pass through. The Nomu then tilted its head left and right around Izuku as if to ensure that he didn't get a single scratch. The tension of the body that Izuku can see is lowered, as more of its hidden eyes saw no injuries. That is until it laid its eyes on Izuku's right leg that is punctured by a silver bullet. Its shoulder went tensed, revealing its whitened teeth, and many fists clutched tightly. Then, it roared. The shout made Izuku's hair strand stand up on the back of his neck. It is the loudest, most piercing scream that he had ever heard. It sounded like exactly a roar of anger simply rushing through its BLD. Even Izuku can tell that the Nomu is mad. Then, it closed. Its head immediately snapped behind it, clenching its teeth at the ghost that isn't fazed by its anger. Instead, it brought the assault rifle up near its crimson eyes and took a step back. And soon, several other ghosts appeared with the smoke vanished. Totaling for Ghost and 3 presumably either dead or unconscious on the ground, while the other stands in a clear view for Izuku to see. Without missing a beat, Izuku draws his gun once more but isn't as fast. The Nomyu immediately went charging towards the ghost with its back turned to Izuku, causing his eyes to widen as all the ghost took their aim and fired. Its wounds are healed. As then an object caught his eye, the copper bullet laying on the dirt ground. Regeneration. Shoot it. Shoot it down. One of the ghosts ordered, loud and clear for everyone in the perimeter to hear. The bullet shells are golden, scattered like the seeds of destruction, oblivious to the BLD that seeps over the ground, already congealing and becoming brown. Following along are sets of bullets dropping from the Nomyu's body and entered the eternal slumber on the Mother Earth and didn't stop the Nomyu to continue to advance. It did cause the ghost to retreat each step and distance the Nomyu has gained. Having to focus on the scene, Izuku nearly failed to feel an attack approaching him rapidly. Due to Bakugo's firm grip on the gun, Izuku let go on the gun itself, and swiftly, just using his hands like a grapple, and turned with his emerald eyes following along. His right hand immediately made contact with warmth and the acceleration of the heartbeat simply by the tips of his fingers. He kept his hold on the neck, to prevent the boy to take another step forward and backward. "You guys really love to sneak attack me." Red. That is the first color that bore into his eyes. Spiky, red hair like the flames that are dancing on his head, unfazed by the breeze. "Do anything and I'll snap your friend's neck." Emerald eyes looked to the corner of his right eye and leveled with the devil. Tiger. There's a certain level of tiredness that equates to insanity. For Aizawa, it's the children, and mostly the children. For once, he would like to temporarily dislocate his spirit from his body and could ask God to take him out for simply a short while, letting his soul go wherever souls go. But he can't. Because in his eyes, there is no God. Kirishima. Mina shouted, in panic, just about to rush in. Aizawa steps in and placed his arm before her. "Sensei. Don't let your emotions take control, Ashino," Aizawa said firmly. "It's already troublesome for those two act according to on their own. I don't need another idiotic child rushing in asking for death." "Then what do you suggest we do? Instead of focusing on what's happening now, think about what you guys can do to improve our situation." He is careful with the words that he chooses to spill out of his mouth, because words are medicine and weapons, they unite and divide. But for Aizawa, he wanted to use the words to make his students think about their limit. They are a hero in training, but they are not exactly a full-fledged hero. They are still a child that represents the future generations. The rest of the Class 1A heard his words and looked at each other. Before giving their teacher a firm nodded. "Yes, Aizawa-sensei. The worst thing that anyone can be is a coward, to the self, to others, and to Mother Earth. For the coward will sacrifice anything to save the physical self, even for emotional death. They are willing to become a monster. To let the dark self live where their true self once did. Nobody can blame that feeling to betray out of fear. Because that's the same eyes that Aizawa can see in the student's eyes. But there is also a determination that made them all stay on the road that is empathetic and compassionate love and fraternity, with a determination that will take death over failures. His students have the spirit of a child, yet there is the nobility of a true hero, always protective and selflessness." Aizawa smirked at the sight of his students, before focusing on the issue of two problematic children at hand. Scratch that's make that three. He placed his goggles on his eyes, then placed his hands onto his cloths, and charged. There are still so many questions that dwelled in Aizawa's mind about this situation. First is the question, how did that boy find this place? A coincidence? Or was our information once more leaked? In the attack on the USJ, there have been discussions among the teachers that they might be a possibility of a traitor lurking in the shadows. But Nezu quickly dismisses which idea, not wanting to create swords among each other. But if that boy didn't get here through intel and this event is simply a coincidence, which doesn't explain how the villains are actually here. Only the teachers and the staff of the U.A. knows about the location. So how? And the answer to his own question is there is a traitor among the walls of U.A. And that would be the worst nightmare. Just as Aizawa-sensei had said, for now, we need to do what we can. Tenya expresses, carefully carrying Mandalay over towards the rest of his class. And that is, to help treat the injuries first. That is part of a hero's job as well. Momo took a deep breath and exhaled through her lips. Her heart is hammering, but she kept her gait casual with no hint of hesitation. But her mind flickers back to the moment death is placed before her eyes. The angel of death comes for the wicked, for those who hurt others with cold indifference. It comes with fingers of knives to slice out the eyes that watch the horror and pain with such callous mind. And when it stands before the greedy, the false, the mortal who crave power, blades ready, tell its victim not to ask for pity because mercy means death. All the angel did is give a one-way ticket to face God. But, seeing that death can easily come and goes, it questioned rather, is death truly be a choice that is wrong and right to the heroes? Death has so many meanings but held one purpose. And to Momo, she knows that death is absolute, but that doesn't mean it's impossible to twist it. Lil Deku is right. She turned and directed her gaze to her classmates. For now, treat the ones that are injured. Gyro-chan and Shoji-kun scout the area to see or hear if there are anyone that within our perimeter. And the rest of you, if there are any enemy, be prepared to fight as you depend on it. Momo is a natural-born leader. She listened more than she spoke, but when she did speak, it was with the kind of even-paced certainty that people listen to. She's not afraid to judge, but she is also always considered every angle first and above all compassionate about her ways. She is the glue that held her class together, now and forever through the life of a hero. There is an explosion in her brain dash, the good sort, the type that carry more possibilities than she can ever be conscious of. Hundreds of ideas buzzing of electricity, she could feel it. It's the calling card of thrills and adventure, of paths awaiting her feet. Whatever is ahead could be a great challenge, and there could be tears, but it is her adventure to take. The ideas would come, probably when she least expected it, so she danced with joy on the tips of her shoes and smiled. I can't wait, Toga happily sings, as her body flowed in dance as if her happiness and words are spoken through her body. But for was NT for her personality, her sensuality would have burst through into the most vibrant picture of her appealing soul. Cute, 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 she giggles to herself at the end, bring up both her hands like a fist covering her lips. Out of anyone, I get myself caught with her. Derby thinks to himself, mentally shaking his head and sigh. Toga, Derby calls out, causing the frantic girl to stop her movement and turns her attention to him. What do you think he'll say about this plan that Ugly has made? A pause. In Toga's mind, thoughts would be an inverse explosion, crazy chaotic turns, and twists of light coming together to simply one idea, to just one word. Stupid. In Derby's triumph, he smirked as simply a small pouting of the lips, a narrowing of the eyes, and a tilting of the head. It is so subtle, which Toga couldn't help but let her lips curled upwards. Then, he let out a breathless chuckle. Yeah, he'll say something like that. Tomura-chan targets Bakugo-chan because he thinks that he can sway him to join our side. To him, that's stupid. He doesn't think anyone is born to join sides, there is no good or evil. To him, we are fighting our own kind. Own kind, hey, Derby repeats the last word. It felt raw when he said it. Our own kind that places a hierarchy based on quirks. Our own kind that determines whether we are heroes or villains in our lives. His left hand then touched his scarred face. He used to sess me off with those words, bringing up bad memories because of it. Truths are the treason of the empire of lies. The lies that swirled around the society, suffocating the empty shape within the villains, stealing their breath. But it is also because of his words that allows me to trust people once more. Toga smiled. He has that effect on people. He has ways with his words. Wish that Ugly has the same effect, Derby commented. But that's clearly impossible. Of course not. If Tomura-chan becomes like him, I would stab him 1,000,000 times as needed. Toga exclaimed, pumping her fist up and down. Nobody can replace him. Freak, Derby commented. Hey! That is so uncut dash then, a snap of a twig immediately drops their conversation and quickly placed their backs on each other. I scanning their area for anything. Trees, bushes, dirt, and twigs. Nothing novel, as silence continues to pass. Then, a rustling of a bush diverted their attention to the left. "I didn't expect us to meet so soon." Derby's and Toga's eyes widen over familiarity of the voice that washed over them. How long has it been? 6 years since that fight. There is no way that these two can forget this voice. I guess even trash like us have fate that placed us together once more. The casting moonlight shines downward, with a single foot exposed in the darkness. Each step it took made the darkness shrink back to where it belongs, revealing a bald, muscular man with shadowed eyes and no hair on his face or head, which wears a simple medical mask that covers over his mouth. Hello again, Derby and Himiko Toga. The moment when the man presented itself in the silver light, the anger in both of Derby's and Toga's eyes were revealed with pain beneath it. For Derby, the fires of fury and hatred were smoldered in the small narrowed eyes as he weighed the pros and cons of the various and creative means available to him. As for Toga, her anger is a silent huntress looming in the night, ready to strike when anyone least expects it. She reached towards her thigh and grabbed on the knife. But the moment she did, it disappeared. Her eyes snapped to her right hands that no clench nothing but air before redirecting back to the maniacal laughter. The moonlight revealed another man beside the first. A lean, young man with light, almond-shaped eyes, with a beak-shaped plague mask holding the knife that Toga was holding on a lean, young man's right hand. Hojo Yu and Toya Setsuno. Derby gritted his teeth as Toga's eyes shimmered away with no light exposing her liveliness. Hojo bowed before Derby and Toya. It's a pleasure to me. Without letting Hojo finish his sentence, Derby lifted his left arm and unleashed his fury judgment on them. The blue flames dance with anger as it propels forward with immense heat. Hojo's eyes saw the brilliant blues before the entire flames consume him. "I'll burn you to ashes," Derby announced with no sign of his anger diminishing. The blue flames burn like a temper that equals Derby's. The air smells and tastes like bonfire while the position of where Hojo and Toya stand glows with vibrant blues beneath the smoky winds. The gate continues to swirl even after Tomura has entered to return to their hideout. Kurogiri now stands alone before the grave. "Good evening, please forgive our audacity for not being here all at once. Wherever you are, up in the sky, I hope you give us your blessing upon our goal. Once this mission is over, I'll try my best and bring everyone here together as we used to. For now, I deeply apologize. We'll come over once more." This loneliness is a vice on Kurogiri's heart, squeezing with just enough pressure to be a constant pain. It kills him daily just slightly little more, taking that was once his inner light and replacing it with darkness that overshadows each moment. It is the fuel of his nightmare, whenever he stands before the grave. Until then, he bowed before completely disappearing with the purple gate, Midoriya Izuku. Chapter 11, Frenemies. The forest that was once alive burns with colors that Toga hasn't seen for an eternity. The flares possess a trinket of life mixed with absolute wraths. The wood is fast to ashes, and the vinyl siding is sliding down like chocolate in the summer heat. The trees with their lively canopy now became a lifeless stick of charcoal. The unfettered light illuminates the scorched ground, emitting the smell of burning lingers. The smoke rises up towards the night, as being carried to the right by the wind over the thousand seas of the forest, raining down dirty ash like anti-snow. A sword thickly covered with a brilliant gem delicately slashed vertically at the flames, revealing Hojo with his crystallized left arm. With the gap created, Setsuno charged forward, twirling the knife which was once Toga's between his fingers and shot forward. Immediately, Toga jumps in, snatching another knife beside her thigh and slashed diagonally, perfectly deflecting the thrown knife, bouncing in the air. But the moment it did, she realized Setsuno was nowhere before her but has already jumped into the sky with his sheathed katana in position ready to slash her down vertically. Immediately, on her reflex, she bends her back backward with her hands touching the ground, while kicking the handle of the knife that she deflected before, as it propels itself diagonally towards Setsuno. Setsuno quickly changes the position of his katana and slash is horizontally, but he failed to notice another incoming knife ripped the side of his plague mask, causing it to fall slightly off his cheeks when he tilted his head at the last second to his right. With Setsuno landed back onto the ground, Toga didn't waste a single second and charged with her knife at her right. With the distance closing in, she held the blade, even, a perfect undaunted horizon leveling with her nose and strike, aiming at Setsuno's right eye. Quickly, Setsuno placed his sheath katana before him horizontally, completely blocking Toga's attack, as the tips of her knife shattered like glass. Golden eyes met the ebonies, with Setsuno's sheath acting as a wall blocking everything below Toga and his expression. Toga's eyes shaded the sky possessed from dawn until dusk. Her pupils have exploded to fill so much of her eye, as now in death they are lifeless and cold. Stand down, Toya. Hojo begins, causing Ebony Eyes to look at his right. We are not here for a fight. Toya looked back at Toga before he let out a grin that she can easily see thanks to his mask slightly falling. A grin that is wide, open, showing his over-whitened teeth. Something seems amusing to him as he then forcibly knocked up his sheath in the air, causing Toga's right hand to follow along. The second it did, Toya twisted his body, lifting his right leg, shoved it deep against Toga's stomach, knocking her back. Pain is what Toga felt when the impact hit, as if her internal organs were being ripped, pulled, and crushed against Toya's forces. That it gives her an unsettling feeling bubbling in her stomach. Her feet drag against the soil, tumbling backward to where she couldn't find her footing before a pair of arms gently wrapped around her body, and her back hitting against the familiar warmth. She coughed, as saliva drips from the corner of her lips. Her eyes were focusing on the dirt ground, before glaring upward towards Toya holding his katana, resting against his shoulders, still having that toothy grin. Long time no see, y'all. Toya greeted, with each of his words dripping with his disgusting happy tone. Toga gritted her teeth, baring her fangs against her prey. I'm gonna stab you. I'm stabbing you. Toya giggles frantically. Show me what garbage of an excuse I am with your skill. To dash flames danced forward. It grew hot and filled the air with its wrath and fury, as it eats away any possible oxygen that is trailing before Setsuno, wanting and trying to suffocate him. It refused to be contained, condemned to die to ashes. Not until it serves its purpose, and so, it chases. With the flames of Inferno coming in fast, Setsuno dodges to his right into a roll. Don't dodge, Derby stated, with his left arm raised into the air straight at Setsuno. Since you're garbage, at least you can do is becoming my kindling and burn to ashes. I would believe that as garbage, we cannot grant your request. Hojo joins in, standing in front and slightly towards the right of his comrade. Even us have an honor and pride which we serve to our leader. Derby scoff. Honor. Pride. Where was that when you backstabbed us? Backstabbing is a fitting word for us garbage, is it not? Toya chuckles through his teeth. Toga knows a knife when she sees it. She also understands that there are two joy. The one is soft and mellow, warming and goes to the core, help to form links between the body and souls, make the person feel at home in their skin. It helps people to love more strongly, to feel connected, and do what is right. While the other is a high, more akin to overeating sugar, comes fast and brings on impulsiveness and indifference to others, hollow and beyond recognition. She cast her eyes upwards, as her heart beat a little faster to see her two enemies. With the flames danced around them, it fits perfectly for the upcoming action, for her inner peace was long shattered, and she had a score to settle. For every great thing she does, there is always one thing that she craves for. It isn't power or wealth, but something so simple as love. To be trapped and be lost is both joyful and painful to bear. But for Toga, she can, because insanity is her gift, that sunk her into new realities with graceful ease than some mundane life. A true delusion is a fixed false belief that gains traction. Like a tire on the road, it drives a person in different directions, often erratic and toward disaster. But hers is more like a glorious Ferris wheel, taking her to new fantastic views of life. She loves it and loves it. But what's more, is that she loved the life that she previously had, before she became lost in a labyrinth maze in her head. Derby-chan. Toga's face moved a little too slowly, as if she was taking in the surroundings more than anyone else. Then, she grinned like a Cheshire cat, with her lips so wide, as if she wanted to eat her prey whole. And she does. Let's kill them. The bullet had done more damage than a blade would. The wound looked nothing like he'd be expect from his extensive crime drama viewing. Instead of a neat reddened hole, it was oozing with dark congealing BLD, traveling like a thin river down Mandalay's injured arm. How do we even get the bullet out? Denki exclaims, feeling the need to move almost without end. In the moment of his words, his eyes would subconsciously dart to his teacher Aizawa, who's quickly gaining distance towards Deku, and his two, classmate Beihiro and Katsuki. And shouldn't we help Aizawa-sensei as well? For what? Shoto questioned Denki's attention. That Deku guy is not going to attack us when Uraraka has his little sister. He's a murderer. Didn't you see? Mineta joins in, utterly frustrated of how oblivious Shoto can be. Yeah. That means he's part of the League of Villains. Denki continues with the flow of his words without taking a moment to stop and take a breather. I mean, sure, Bakugo attacked him first, but it was because he shot a person. He's clearly a murderer. A villain. So shouldn't we? His words were quickly cut off, as a sharp sting followed by a high-pitched ringing exploding in his left ear, causing him immediately to clamp up his words. His eyes then turned the source, a familiar ear jack. You're a guy, aren't you? Stop complaining. Kyoka shouted with irritation in her words, as one of her ear jacks are plunged into the ground, and her right hand pushing her ear inwards with her palm trying to muffle out the outer sounds. But Mineta's words were quickly cut off by Tenya's. We need to trust Aizawa-sensei. He is a teacher from the youth high school, and an expert hero. If we can't even trust our teacher to handle his side of the situation, then what kind of students are we? In Tenya's words, the students of Class 1A feel safe, because they aren't simply words. Tenya has always been on their side, daily ever since they all meet in UA. He knows the faults of fear-consuming, anger-raging, and anxious-raising within his classmate, friends, because he experienced it himself when Stain crushed his brother. He wouldn't even stand and be here but for was NT for his classmate Katsuki and Shoto giving him a new light to be who he wanted to be. A hero likes his brother. And in return, he wanted to do the same for his classmate and the newfound friend. He'll be there to listen, defend, understand, and encourage. He'll be the one that any student can trust. The weight lifted from Denki's shoulder a little as if an overly large child had simply leaped off after a satisfying piggyback ride. But it seems like the after effect took a toll on his body, as there is still some dissatisfaction dwelling in his heart. But he needs to be on the same page as everyone else. You're right, sorry. Even if his heart disagrees, if it improves their survival chances against the villains and the unknown group, he'll do what is told. We were attacked by the League of Villains before, and we lived. Kyoka continues. So what's the point of worrying about this now? If we lived once, then we can definitely live again. So SCK it up. To Denki, even though her words seem harsh and all, but it is her words that are telling his panic and the uneasiness to shut up. It's difficult, but it did quell down. He doesn't know how she did it so effortlessly, but he couldn't be more grateful to have her by his side whenever he needed assistance. With her words, Denki raised both his palms and slapped his face hard. Mineta flinched by the sudden action. The reddened stain deepens Denki's skin color, but enough to let him focus on the task on hand. And that does what he can for his classmate. Okay, what do you guys need? While Mineta is still having a slight doubt clouding over his sight, he still chooses to cooperate. Okay. We just need to get the bullet out right. Let's do this then. There are few pointers that Aizawa noticed about Deku. The kid is a skilled fighter, but with uneven power. Why? Is that his quirk? If so, then his quirk is very similar to that idiot's, the temporary strengthening. But not long. Limitation. With the distance closing in, Aizawa gripped onto his cloth tightly. But before he even shot it forwards, Deku took action first. With quickness, Deku pulled a hero towards him, as turning him around along with him and placed him before Deku exactly like a shield. to where his right hand that is originally grabbing his neck is holding his head towards their right, while Deku's left hand is placed like a gun right under a hero's chin with his index finger pressing in hard. A hero's breath hitched. "Don't move." Aizawa's footsteps stop abruptly. "That goes for you as well." Emerald Eyes look to his right, to where Katsuki's right palm is directly near his face. "Hotshot." Katsuki curses. "The name's not Hotshot, you bstrd." Emerald Eyes looked away from Crimson Eyes and met Aizawa's. "Don't ignore me." "Bakugo." Aizawa shouted with his firm voice. "Stand down. You're not helping the situation to me or Kirishima." Katsuki snickered annoying before setting his hands back down to his sides, but kept a keen eye on Deku for any movement that he can strike and suspicion movement. "Now then, seems like I got both of your attention," Deku continued, slightly glancing back to where the Nomu is fighting off the ghost from behind. "This isn't a great spot or position to talk, but I would like to do things peacefully." "What?" "Peacefully." Aizawa couldn't help but take a note on the sudden word that Deku has magically spoken from his mouth. "In what ways are your actions peaceful? Then in what ways were you and your students' actions heroic?" Izuku countered. "We're basically standing on the same page, both using violence the very moment we met each other. So what gives you the right to even questioning my actions?" "Sharp tongue," Aizawa commented. "It is human to feel the light and the dark. It is human to have a full range of emotions, a full toolkit. All those feelings are normal and useful depending on the situations that people find themselves in. But apparently, his students used their emotions into violence. And Deku can only return those emotions with an also equal amount of violence to counter. Truly, a flaw in himself and his students." "Thank you, but I would like to cut the chit-chat short," Izuku stated, pressing his index finger into a hero's chin. "So what's your answer?" "I only take yes." It's a gamble, but that's the only choice Izuku can make. He is running out of time, and he needs to get out of this situation fast. With the ghost already finding his location, he wouldn't even dare to imagine what will happen if the 8 precepts of death also came. The longer he stays, the higher the risk for both them. He prays that he simply doesn't need to use any more violence as necessary, prays that Eraserhead will say yes. And he did. Fine. Izuku can only let out a silent relief on the answer he had hoped for. Good. Now I would like all 4 of us retreating back to where your students are, while this Nomu is distracting some friends of mine. He can see Eraserhead paused in thought for not speaking anything. But what is difficult to see is his eyes being covered by his golden goggles with the lines obstructing the hero's views. Now, that let a ponder in Izuku's thought. Is his quirk related to his eyes? But another possibility caught his eyes: the cloth. Or is it something related to manipulation? Tweezers. Momo requested. I need tweezers to pull out the bullet. Momo carefully inspects the bullet wound on the arm and pushing a little wider to see the silver bullet. Can't you make one, Kiro? Tsuyu asked. No, Momo replied, head tilting down in shame. I haven't learned the materials yet. Even my book is back at the house. I'm deeply sorry. Then should we go back and see if there's any first aid kit? Hunter suggests. No. Momo immediately replied. Doing that, we will be separated. We still don't know how many enemies are still out there, and being separated is the worst option there is. How so? Denki questioned, scratching his head. If Koka-chan and Shoji-kun did catch anything approaching us fast, not only most of your teachers are down, and if students are separated, we won't have the upper hand at defending ourselves. Momo continues, as her eyes went to Ochako. Not to mention, we can't also put civilians in danger. Several eyes directed to Ochako, who's still carrying her in her arms. Civilian? What civilian? Mineta pointed his finger at Deku's little sister. Since her brother is clearly a villain, then that makes her a villain as well. Hey! Ochako barked. Don't jump to conclusions just yet. She's just a little girl. Little girl or not, if she is part of the murderer's comrade, then she is a villain as well. How dare you? Ochako is never the one that argued with her first, but her words packed a powerful punch. I can't believe you, Mineta-kun. She's only a little girl who's clearly harmless. Just because she seems harmless now, that doesn't mean that she ain't a killer like her. You done. A single voice shatters the heated tension between the two students, as all eyes directed to the source, Deku with his right hand on the back of a hero's neck, and Aizawa-sensei slightly on the right front side of him, and Katsuki opposite, glaring daggers not only at the students, but also at Deku. He's another word from your mouth, and you won't be able to see the daylight the next time you opened your eyes. Deku threatens, as he then shoved a hero in front, causing him to tumble a few steps forward and grabbing his neck to soothe the pain that Deku has put on him. Mineta quickly uses both his hands and covered his mouth, shoving back down his saliva, and the words down to the pit of his stomach. Emerald Eyes then sight his sight on Ochako, before taking a gentle step to ease the pain of his right calf. But he is once again blocked by Katsuki standing in front of him, glaring him down. Move. Make me. Katsuki growled. The air is so brittle that it can snap any second. Everyone is looking at those two, waiting and unsure of what shall happen. While Aizawa-sensei can only let out a tired sigh on them. As for Ochako, she can feel the fear in her chest waiting to take over. It simply sits there like an angry ball, propelling her towards anxiety that she just doesn't need. Perhaps it only wants to warn and protect her from Deku, but clearly, now he isn't a threat at all. Ochako chokes on her first syllable, as she then swallowed and took a breather. It's okay, Bakugo. It's his sister after all. Of course, he would want her back. She explains as she forces herself to drag her feet towards Deku slowly. The walk should have taken like 5 seconds maximum, but to her, it felt like hours has passed. Each step she walks, it decreases the distance between her and Deku. As she walked past Katsuki, his crimson eyes will follow her every movement. Then, she stops. Auburn eyes met Emerald's, as she then reached out her arms, allowing Deku to carefully and gently picking Eri back into his arms. Emerald eyes only focus on the little girl, as much to Ochako and everyone's surprises his lips lifted upward, allowing to show his teeth were perfectly aligned. The warm glow his happiness gives when his sister is back in his arms. He gently placed his forehead on hers, and quietly whispers to only Katsuki, Ochako, and Aizawa could hear. I got you. And as if those words were like a magical spell that broke a curse, the little princess slowly opened her eyes, and calls out for her brother. Deku. Chapter 12, The Talk. The voice is unexpected. It is spoken with a low agreeable trace of huskiness and so much warmth than anyone had expected. Deku cradled Eri closer, and soothed the side of her silver hair gently as possible using his right hand. I'm here, sweetie. I'm here. His lips stretched into a smile but didn't quite reach his emerald eyes. They were lit with sadness and uneasiness. But all seemed to vanish as Eri slowly and reluctantly blinked twice as her eyes went to focus. She simply stares, as if her brain is taking him in, struggling to comprehend that the person before her isn't some illusion or dream that she had. Her brain can't formulate a thought, at least not of any language. But her action is all it needs for her to make sure that the person before her is indeed real. Threw her arms around him. Deku. The hug is a simple gesture of affection, perhaps the indestructible bonds between the brother and sister. The arms that held him were little, yet strong. The warmth of his body meets Eri's, giving her hope that he'll be by her side whenever she's awake or not, just like he always did before. It suited her than anyone had ever expected, as Eri snuggled her head at the muzzle of Deku's neck, with her tiny hands clenching tightly on the stained white shirt and the dirty vest. Deku must readjust his hands to hold Eri properly. His right hand clasp around Eri's lower back, the other strokes her silver hair. With each soft touch, Katsuki can see the little girl quivering with the collar of Deku's shirt soaked with water. Deku held her in silence. Is she okay? Ochako approaches, with her fingers intertwined with one another before her. Deku didn't reply. Instead, something caught his attention. Emerald Eyes immediately snapped back, shifting his body sideways for his eyes to narrow at the scene before him. Aizawa stood before his class with his right hand grasping on one of the cloth. "Aizawa-sensei?" Ochako asked as Aizawa placed his left hand out as a barrier that prevents any of his student approaching. "Stay back." Is something words caught at a hero's throat as his voice trails off slowly like his words are unwilling to take flight. There is a shock in his eyes, widen like it's most horrific thing he has ever laid his eyes on. The stench of BLD blanketing that air in a choking aroma. No one, not even the teachers, can get used to it. It pulls the strings in them, allowing the scene to hit the students like waves. It surely also didn't help that the wind whipped around the smell even further into their nostrils. The bodies lay like ghoulish mannequins, lifeless and scattered. It is a complete massacre. Kyoka backstepped from the scene. Each step's her stomach tightness and ache all the more. She kept swallowing, and her throat kept clenching, but despite what, she could not stop the warm feeling rising through her chest. She could taste it at the buckled of her mouth. Constance buckled over. She quickly turned the other direction, as a warm, cloudy cream-colored liquid spills from her lips. Mizo quickly reached out and patted the back of her back slightly and started soothing her back. "You all right?" "Just gimme dash," she coughs frequently. The image simply seems to burn deep in her mind that just refuses to let go. Kyoka isn't the one that has the sickening feeling. "I think I'm gonna throw up," Denki started, with his face morphed to a pale sickening color covering his mouth. The others are more speechless than allowing words and thoughts to form inside their brain. Katsuki is one of them. Waves of heat coursing through his BLD, a cold sweat glistened in his gaunt features, even he is shaking in the inside. But he is different. He kept a steady eye, as he gently placed his left hand on Eri's head, preventing her to see anything that is going on. The minty, Nomyu stands before him. The scarlet BLD that is oozing down the skin in thick droplets is quickened to black in the July heat. The BLD flows so freely as it coated its fingers like caramel over an apple, expect there are no golden browns. Mindlessly, it stood before it took its action. It knelt. With its right knee out and the other flat, both its hands balled into a fist, as its knuckle meets the tainted ground and its head lowered. What stood before him isn't a human, rather a sword. A sword formed within the orange-torched flames dance warmly within the cool steel, and it am not afraid to sink its fangs on anyone. And what stands before him isn't a sword, rather, it's a shield. Rusted and scratched, forged in fiery heat before setting in cold water. What stands before Deku is a knight swore to protect and slay for its king. What's going on here? The mud and grit have become enmeshed with raw pink flesh and is spotted with BLD. There is a cut on his left arm. And what stands before the entire group is the pro-hero wild pussycat, Tiger. The other two villains got away, Tiger informed, as Mina carefully inspects his arm. The moment the smoke occurred, they disappeared. And the next thing I knew, I was stuck in the crossfire. We still haven't got any information out of them, Aizawa added. Not even the one you captured. Aizawa shifted his position sideways and stuffed his hands in his breathes pocket as his eyes directed to Mr. Compress, still tied, having Fumikage and Shoto stand guard. Haven't spoken a single word. Loyalty runs thick even in villains. Then what about those two? Aizawa then redirected his gaze to his left, as there sits Deku leaning against the side of the house that students and teachers were temporarily living, while holding Eri sits on his lap with her back facing towards Aizawa. The Nomyu, on the other hand, stands before them, more to the left like standing on guard. Not a clue. Aizawa stated. But one thing for sure is that the Nomyu knows them. So they are part of the villain then. That is what I'm unsure of, Aizawa answers, leaving Tiger to a confused state, allowing him to continue. The other villain didn't know him. When they first encountered, none of them seemed to know each other. That is when the Nomyu came. What if it's an act? If so, then what's the purpose? His eyes never left Deku as he rips part of his right breathes as a cloth to bandage around his injured leg. And after that is done, he wipes the BLD off using his shirt and unravels his right hand that is currently holding probably the bullet. He then looked at her and cupped her cheeks. His eyes are softened, and his lips are moving slowly to ensure that Eri can understand. To get close to us. Information. Attack us when our guard is down. He shakes his head slightly. It doesn't make sense. Because if it would, then he would be doing actions that interact with us, not to his little girl. All his attention is focusing on her. He couldn't care less about us. If he's not with the villains, then who is he? It's too soon to disregard those two as villains. Especially the boy. He paused. He did shoot someone. Who? Tiger asked, all high alert the danger the boy can bring. Not one of us, nor the villain. It would seem that it's his pursuer. One of those that Nomu obliterated. Can we say for sure that he won't be any danger to the students? As long as we don't touch his little girl. His priority is all on her. But I can't say for sure about the students that currently made contact with him with violence. His eyes then landed on Bakugo grouped along with Ejiro and Denki. Meanwhile, Mina is in a complete daze. She couldn't focus at all at the wound that she volunteered herself to be taken on. Her head is a complete mess about what her teacher's talking about Deku. Questions and questions overflow inside her head like literally trying to drown. So, Deku is bad. Good. What does it make him when he shot the person then? Villain. Clearly a murderer, but her brain is mentally screaming right now. And speaking of screaming, a single voice catches all attention in Class 1A. It's A. No, 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 no. The scream is primal. It had a raw intensity to it that told of urgency, which says the expression of a mind lost in absolute fear. A desperate need to be held and loved. Listen to me, sweet no. All it comes back are the scream of a precious child, that soul at sea, that a brain in pain. I know it's hard I finally got you back. As much as she tried to hold it in, the pain came out like an uproar from her throat as a silent scream. The beads of water started falling down one after another, without a sign of stopping. The muffled sobs racked against her chest. I finally got you back. Izuku opens his lips, but his voice isn't being reached through. He closed his lips and tried again. He reached out once more, touching her cheek and caress it, wiping away the tears. You are stronger than this. I know that. He starts off slow. But sweetie, you got to understand. He took a deep breath and spoke for the third time. I can't run. He continues, licking his lips. They got my calf, and I can't run like I used to. I can only walk, not to mention even trying to walk straight. Not to mention my quirk . He sighed. With my inability, I can't get you to safety. I can't protect you. Izuku can see Eri's little hand balled into a fist clenching her red dress. But who's going to protect you? Her eyes lowered, not even wanting to make direct eye contact with Izuku. Others have emotional scars, but not Izuku. He's still bleeding because his heart is too strong, too independent to where his emotions are simply a wet concrete loose. There is no anger, joy, resentment, or sadness when Eri said those words. I'm strong. I can protect myself. Eri shakes her head. That's what you said last time. It didn't work out. Last time. Izuku thinks to himself, as his fingers are escaping from her cheeks. I say that. Emerald eyes trail downward, to where his eyes then landed on the bloody knee that is darkened. She's hurt. Immediately, Izuku brings his right sleeve towards his mouth and bites on it hard and pulled. The cloth rips off easily like it's nothing, as Izuku continues the motion as the cloth reached all the way to his shoulder. With the cloth unravel, Izuku's right arm is fully exposed to the summer heat, and several curious eyes sending to his way that Izuku can care less about. He carefully brings the cloth and placed it around her knee in a log cabin style. He did the same to his other sleeve and wrapped it on the other knee. After that was done, Izuku looked at Eri once more. Dirt is smeared across her cheek and forehead. Her red dress caked with dried mud and droplets of darkening blood, there is never a moment when dust. Look at me, sweetie. Eri shakes her head. Izuku let out a sigh. Look, I don't know what I said before, it's different now. How is it different? She finally looks at him. You'd leaving me again. I'm not dash yes, you are. She repeats her words, meekly. You are. It is more than a cry. It is a desolate sobbing that comes from a child drain of all hope. Her tears mingled with her words, and her gasping wail kept within. The pain that flowed from her is as palpable as the frigid wind. Izuku stays silent. I don't like it. She shakes her head. I don't. I hate it. I hate it. Eri stared at the air like it had suddenly become thick and is not almost too difficult to draw in. She became deaf to the soothing words from Izuku's lips. Please, she begs quietly, broken. Please don't leave me again. He doesn't know what to do. His brain is dominated by a voice one is as negative and dark as a demon and shakes with fear, as it advises against Eri's words. You will fail to protect her. You will lose her, the voice is right. Izuku will lose Eri, he is failing. He didn't listen. He didn't listen to the voice. He reaches out his hand once more, touching her cheek, forcing her to look at him, and placed his forehead against hers. He closes his eyes and sighs. You are as stubborn as a mule. Who? Izuku let out a soft chuckle. It's nothing. Emerald eyes met crimson. We're staying together. Her smile is one of Izuku's happiness growing, up to a spring flower opens. He can see how it came from deep inside to light her eyes and spread into every part of her. When Izuku's words left him, her body relaxes. However, Izuku stated, if anything happens, you gonna run, got it? Her smile falters into a thin line. Sweetie, please. Izuku implore. I can endure anything they threw at me, but I can't bear to see anything happen to you. So please? The silence lay on his skin like a poison, seeping into his blood, killing slowly as Eri didn't answer. The silence is like a gaping void, need to be filled with sounds, words, anything. It's truly poisonous, cruelly underscoring how vapid their conversation has become. It seeped into their every pore, slowly paralyzing them from either speech or movement. Is everything all right here? A voice chimes in, breaking the silence as emerald eyes cast behind Eri and meet the pro-hero Eraserhead. The hero is giving Izuku a stern look. Something you need. Eraserhead's eyes narrowed. Your girl was screaming and crying. And? What do you mean and? Do your heroes tend to poke your nose in every business that they came across? Preferably I wouldn't. But as a hero, we need to make sure everyone is safe. Eraserhead answers, growing a slightly bit impatient with Izuku. From what exactly? Izuku questioned. Our own kind. As if Izuku's words were a foreign language, Eraserhead is trying to comprehend what he simply said. Izuku continues. You seem to be a logical person, rather than the hothead that I spoke with, but I believe you understand this, you and I are no different from one another. Those students behind you are no different than the villains. Eraserhead's stare is intentionally cold. His face somehow lacked the mobility others had. His eyes rested on the emerald eyes, as Izuku stares back head-on. All men are equal to begin with, but they weren't created to be. Why is that? A pause. You said this yourself, as a hero you need to make sure everyone is safe. But where were the heroes when we needed help? Izuku continues, as Eri gripped onto the edges of her dress. Where were the heroes when we're suffering at the hands of my creator? A silent reply. Izuku scoffs lightly. Of course, the hero can't poke their noses at every single person in the universe, because that's impossible. So what makes you think that you can poke into ours? Izuku then uses the wall as a supportive mechanism to push himself upward and limp towards Eraserhead while still holding Eri in his arms. He stares at him as he comes to a good distance between him. Eri hugs Izuku tightly on the neck. "You are no hero." The first thing that Aizawa laid his eyes on is the scars littered on both Deku's arms. The scar is like a washed-out fishbone, the evidence of long-ago injuries. The cicatrix on his arms is broad and rough, and Aizawa can tell that whatever caused the old wound was blunt and injury had never been stitched or treated. Not to mention the bite marks that resemble something with sharp teeth dug into his skin, leaving the unsightly scars mostly on his wrist. He doesn't need to see it anymore, as he can clearly tell that this boy before him has been suffering a lot and have been trying to do his best for his girl. He takes out both of his hands from his pocket and bow. "Sorry." Deku's eyes widen by the sudden word that spills from Aizawa's mouth and action. "Must be hard, huh?" Emerald eyes look away from his contact, pressing into a thin line. He then redirected his gaze on him once more before walking to the direction of the forest. "We don't need your sympathy." As Deku continues walking, Aizawa can see Eri peek up from Deku's shoulder, meeting his eyes before setting it back to where it originally is hiding, while the Nomu follows behind. However, his road is quickly blocked by two new student Yuga and leader, one a quivering cat, and the other a solidified statue. "Even though I'm sorry of what happens to you, I can't have you leave under my radar," Aizawa explains, as Deku slowly turns his head back and look at him. "You have committed murder, and that needs to be justified by law accordingly." "Murder?" Deku questions. "In what ways is my actions get to be called murder? Is this brat serious?" Aizawa is having a mental breakdown by the obvious question that can be answered in most simplified form. "You shot someone." Denki exclaim. "How's that not murder?" "In your eyes, maybe it is." His eyes directed to Denki, and on mere eye contact, he shut his mouth. "Oh yeah. Then, what would you f-inch call it, genius?" Katsuki joins in next to Denki, matching his glare with Deku's. "It's survival, idiot." And chaos ensued. Toga held the knife, twisting it in the moonlight as if it could slice up the light. The coldness of the blade only steadied her resolve. It pulled away from the heat from her clasping fingers, and they blanched in response. The knife is one perfect piece of steel, the sharp cutting edge morphing into the smooth handle in a way that reminded her of the dorsal fin on the sharks, despite the tip being damaged. Her expression exaggerated by the dark shadows around her golden eyes. She can already see her prey in a pool of darkening BLD, and her face split into a grin that arched in a sickly, cute way, never making it to her almost sunken eyes. She raised her knife that is glimmering ominously in the pale moonlight, cold and ruthless, a weapon without kindness pointing straight at Toya. "He's mine." Wait dash before Hojo can even spill out his second word, Toya raised his arm that is holding his katana before his comrade. "Hold it, Hojo. Can't you see? She just declared a fight against me. A trash." A grin spread over his mouth, wide and open. "It would be such a disgrace for not accepting it. Our mission is not dash sure. Toya shushed his partner. "Can you hear it?" The inferno had ebbed to nothingness. The silence was pure as the crackling fire, and the snap of the twigs eaten and consumed to ashes. The fire rages, but there is nothing else reaching to Toga and Derby's ears except for the crackling fire. The sound of the angels. With those words, Toya slowly unsheathed his katana, dragging his blade out, letting it coming out alive, shining under the silver ray. The blade is sharp and dangerous, and have been wanting to sink its fangs ever since it has been created. With a swift motion, Toya slashes his blade vertically in the air and announced with enthusiasm. "Shall we?" Toga gripped her handle tighter and dashed to her right as Toya follows along. "Setsuno." "Eyes over here," Derby stated, as he lifted his left hand, and a burst of embers leaped from his skin and propelled itself towards Hojo in high speed. Quickly Hojo raised his right arm, formed into a crystallized sword, and slashed the flames vertically apart. "You're with me." He strikes. Toya charges, dragging his katana with only his right hand up horizontally, as Toga quickly placed her right foot back and leaned her upper body back. The tip of his blade barely cuts her skin but managed to get the tips of her frontal hair. As the Toya finishes his first slash, he leans in towards Toga and, using the back handle of his katana, and smashed it across Toga's right cheek. She quickly loses balance with her footing, her feet crisscrossing one another as if she was simply a newborn that learned how to walk and continues to stumble backward without stopping. And when she did gain her footing, her eyes snapped back to the front. Toya is nowhere to be seen. Immediately, Toga snapped her eyes behind as there stands Toya, gripping her armed hand, pulling it back and twisted. As that was insufficient, with Toga's right hand restraints, Toya lifts up his right foot and aims directly at the back of her knee. Time seems to slow down when Toga is falling. In the seconds it took her to reach the ground, she knew it shall hurt. Toya sits atop Toga and leans down next to her left ear as she lays there struggling desperately. Quit struggling. She didn't listen. Toya snickers, then let his lips curled into a devilish smile. He leans down and whispers into Toga's ears. The words flow out so naturally that Toga almost didn't quite catch it. All her movement stops, her pupils dilated, and her mouth quivers into waves. I love you, Himiko Toga. Those words were only spoken to one specific people that she holds dear. The final words before he said his goodbyes to her and other family members. Toya, on the other hand, laughs. Yes. That's the expression I want to see. The despair, the anger, the sadness. Everything. You. Who? Toya ped his head to the side. What did you say? Kill you. Who? I'll kill you. Toga forcibly turns her body, causing Toya to balance, and shifted his entire weight to the left. And in that same moment, Toga brings her right elbow and smashed it directly at his face. The moment he got off, Toga rolled her body to the opposite side and stood on her feet, still gripping on her knife. Toya, on the other hand, laughs as his palm covers his eyes and let it drop. His eyes wrinkled upwards. Seems like I stabbed a nerve. Toga buries the front of her right foot deep into the soil as she pushes herself and charged. With the distance close enough, she aims her knife forward straight where Toya's left eye is. She missed. Toya shifted his body to the side. His eyes kept an eye on the direction on the blade, to where Toga then swayed to horizontal, followed by a diagonal slash. He invaded them all. But she didn't stop her attack. With her third attack misses, she added the fourth and slash him again. It didn't contact. The fifth attack, Toga aimed vertically once more, as Toya slips his hand under his mask and pulls out a knife that is equally small as Toga and blocked her attack. Immediately, Toya lifted his right leg and aimed at Toga's stomach once more. Saliva pours from her mouth, but she gritted her teeth and slashed upwards. BLD flows into the air like fallen red petals as Toga stumbles back. She gasped for air as Toga then reaches his left injured hand to his back and pulls out a tiny pistol. He aimed directly at her and pulled the trigger without hesitation. 2 shots rang out but missed her as Toga starts running to her left. 2 more shots rang out. 1 missed but other scraped against her blade. The moment the bullets ski off, she threw it all her might, believe that his eyesight will only be on that single object. He did. As Toya is busy focusing on the knife that she threw, she charged straight at him. To where when he tilted his head to the right with the knife flying past, but his sight hasn't come to the front just yet, Toga reaches her right hand, clenching tightly on Toya's light orange tie, and pulled him forward, smashing her head into his face, letting go of his knife. As the contact is made, Toga let go as Toya's head is flung backward. BLD drips from his nose, as he then brought up his left hand and aimed. But Toga is faster by bringing her right arm as a guard near her ear. Toya's wrist made contact with her, and the gun fires. Totally misses, with the bright orange light shining behind Toga. With his shot finished, Toga reached to his pistol, turning it upside down with the barrel aiming at his stomach with Toya's trigger finger still on it. And pulled. Toya's eyes widen as he drops the pistol to the ground and walked backward holding his bullet wound. Impressive! Toya's back hits the tree and slumps down, while Toga gets another knife from her patch and twirls it around her fingers. Each step she took is slow, announcing death is coming for Toya. But he couldn't care less. "See, Mon, kill me. I know you want to. After all, we did take him away from you." Toga raised her knife and strikes. It landed. It landed beside him. The blade sunk deep into the truck as Toga reaches his tie and pulled him close. "Where is he? Where is Overhaul?" Toya scoffed, then turned into laughter. "Loyalty runs thick in our family. Say it. You should just kill me instead." But before Toga spoke another word, Toya continued. "But I guess I can let you on a little something. A present from us to you villains." "Present?" Toga thinks to herself. Toya grinned as he spoke his words. "We were thinking of giving you this present once we have him under control. But seems like we have tossed that plan out." "What are you talking about?" "He's alive, why no." "What?" "Oh, see, Amon, you know." Toya leans in as their eyes stare at each other. "That boy is alive. That Midoriya boy." She froze as Toya couldn't help but laugh under the bloody, treacherous moon.